Welcome to the Bill Kelly Podcast, critical discussions in critical times. Here's your host, Bill Kelly.
Hey, welcome to the Bill Kelly Podcast live stream, and it's such a pleasure to be with you. It's been a couple of weeks. We took a little bit of time off for some other things that we had to do, and we're out of town for a little while, but there's so much going on in the world, and we get so much feedback from you, our viewers, about these live streams and the back and forth that we could do on these. So I'm looking forward to this evening. We tried this last night. If you were with us last night, again, our apologies. The platform, I guess, was having some problems. And everybody that was trying to do these sorts of things last night got knocked off for a variety of reasons that we don't get into. But we're here now, and that's what counts. And I got a lot of stuff I want to talk to you about, and I know you want to talk about a lot of things. When we did the survey about what we're going to talk about on the live cast today, a lot of it was about Canadian politics. About 85% of you that responded said, let's talk about Canadian politics, because there's a lot going on. And we're going to get into that in a couple of seconds. Dexter Morganblood says, hello, Bill. Well, hello to you, too, and thank you for hanging in there. It's been a hectic 24 hours. We can talk about the Prime Minister is in India now, getting set to have some meetings about trade and what's going on. Pierre Poilievre made a speech today about what he thinks Canada should be doing to deal with the United States and Donald Trump. I got a lot to say about that, but I want to hear what you feel about it, too. So we'll get into those sorts of things. And U.S. politics, Hillary Clinton was before that congressional committee, the Oversight Committee, talking about Epstein. I don't know what she said, obviously, because they do everything behind closed doors there. But anyway, those are some of the things, or whatever else is on your mind about politics or anything else that's going on here on the live stream. Good evening, Mr. Kelly. That's Kil Kwanzaa. Can't wait to hear your thoughts on the Leader of the Opposition speech. All right, I'll start off with that, because I've got a few points about that. Poilievre made a speech to a Toronto business club. I'm not sure it was the Empire Club. There's two or three of them in Toronto where that can go on. And what we were told is, okay, he's going to declare what the government should be doing. And we were also told that he was finally going to start talking about Donald Trump and the problems that he's causing. I'm not so sure he actually went into that to the degree that he should. But there are a couple of things about Poilievre's speech that I want to focus on right now, and then I'll get your comments on this. The headline is, Canada should not declare a permanent rupture with the United States in favor of a strategic partnership with China. That's what Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says, adding that this country's prosperity and security is inseparable from a stable relationship with the U.S. I get a lot of problems with that comment. First of all, Prime Minister Carney or anybody else in this government has never said that there was a permanent rupture. What the Prime Minister said at Davos and has repeated time and time again is the rupture has occurred. It's not a blip, as some people are trying to characterize it. It's not going to go away if Donald Trump stops being president, that there's a permanent rupture that needs to be addressed, but not with the United States. At no time did Carney ever say we're going to sever relations with the United States. Poilievre is the master of misrepresenting facts and you know, the doom and gloom attitude that he's always trying to put forth here, and it's really becoming tiresome. And the other element of this I want to talk about here, Poilievre says that our prosperity and security is inseparable from a stable relationship with the U.S. Well, I'm going to go one further, Mr. Poilievre. Our future is, well, for that to be fruitful, or that relationship between Canada and the U.S., you have to have a stable United States, and right now we don't. And what the Prime Minister has said time and time again, and what Canadians are saying, is that this is not a reliable partner. It's not a partner that we can trust anymore. And Poilievre just doesn't seem to get it. He doesn't seem to understand. And I watched some of the talk shows this afternoon on CBC and on CTV. And again, this wouldn't be the problem if Carney had delivered and got all these trade deals that he said he was going to get. It's not Canada that's screwing this thing up. It's Donald Trump. How conservatives get that through their head? We're ready to make a deal, but you listen to what Trump is saying and the demands that he's making right now. We're doing the best we can, but we're not going to give away everything just to try to get a deal for the sake of having a deal. And Poilievre just doesn't seem to get that. It's a very frustrating circumstance, and it's about time that somebody called him out. We're going to continue to talk about it, and if you've got some comments on that, by the way, we'll certainly put them up here. We'll talk about those too. Where are we here? Rebecca says CTV reported that he was prime ministerial in his address. Well, that's a load of crap. Is that just because he wasn't whining, bitching, and complaining about how unfair everybody is to him? Give me a break. Poilievre is Poilievre, and he can stand up there and try to put his chest out and show that he's still lifting weights, and he gets a little bit of hair color in there and everything, but he still does not sound prime ministerial. Randy says PP speech partly copied Carney, just using different Roman quote. Well, yeah, he did talk about, having to diversify economics and trade and things of this nature. And you're right. I find that kind of ironic because the conservatives are always saying that, well, Carney is copying their policies. Well, now it's interesting. Poilievre is actually copying his policies. Mitch says that he reads words that somebody else wrote. Well, that's pretty sure. You get this guy in front of a microphone without a script, and you get so much of a different story. Linda says Pierre is about 10 months late, finally saying that we won't be the 51st state. You know what? It's an interesting point, Linda. I saw that quote too. That's not the problem with Donald Trump. Donald Trump can whine all he wants about Canada being the 51st state or that he wants to buy Greenland. The problem with Donald Trump and Canada's future is the tariffs. And he will not admit that. Poilievre does not want to admit that the problem is Donald Trump. The deal could have been made, should have been made, and could be made sometime this year if they were sitting down and actually wanting to negotiate. But that's not happening here. Canada Phil says PP acted as an apologist for Americans. It was a ridiculous take that is completely out of step with the majority of Canadians. And that's what that was a point that he made, Phil. That's a good point. Poilievre went on to say, he says, we shouldn't be doing this because the Americans are our friends, and the polling indicates that Americans really do love Canadians. They don't like the fact that the counter tariffs that we've put in place or that some of the things that we as consumers are doing is really hurting their business. But the reaction to that and the solution to that is go tell your boss, Donald Trump, to stop screwing around with Canada, right? 57 May says, sorry, Bill, but Poilievre really is the Uriah Heep, the Dickens groveler on our environment. Poilievre is not going to change. And every time he makes one of these speeches and some of the folks in the media jump on board and you just hear that he looked prime ministerial, they think he's going to change. He's going to be more diplomatic. He's going to be, more open-minded about stuff. He's not going to change. Poilievre is Poilievre, and that's the way things are going to be. Canada Nurse says, good to have you on the show today. Poilievre doesn't understand or care what Canadians want. That's why he's still in politics. He was voted out for a reason. Trump is cognitively the problem here, and it goes on and on, exactly what we've just been talking about. And you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. And that's what's going on with Poilievre. He's just rhyming off what he's always rhymed off. Ray says, I am so over Donald Trump. Can we talk about South Korea? That's so much better. Well, yeah, Canada signed a deal with South Korea. No, not for the submarines. That hasn't happened yet. But it's a defense deal and a cooperative deal that was actually initiated by Prime Minister Carney when he was over in the Southeast a couple of weeks ago. And that's, I think, another reason why we underscore this idea about the fact that Carney is going to these places and making these deals and these understandings economically and otherwise, and we're starting to see the benefit. And I saw another article today, I think it was in the National Post, Carney's all over the place. He's hardly ever here. He's working. You don't get on the phone or you don't send an email to the president of the European Union and say, hey, let's cut a deal here. You've got to have face-to-face meetings. And our prime minister is doing that. Ronald Howitt, good to have you with us, says Poilievre is a moron. He might actually be related to Trump. I'm not a liberal and never have been, but I will vote for Carney again and again if possible. The polling seems to indicate that, doesn't it, Rod, that the Canadians are starting to understand that this is the right guy at the right time for the challenges that we have here in this country. Poilievre is trying to play catch-up. He's late to the party here, as usual, and now trying to sound like he's part of the Team Canada thing. And I'm sorry, it's just not happening. Carmen says the polling also shows that Canadians don't trust the U.S. Carmen, let me show you that. Thanks for bringing that up. Here's Poilievre today at this business meeting in Toronto saying that we need to be more open-minded because Canadians or Americans really still love Canadians. It's not reciprocal. The Nanos poll that was released on Monday, and I think we talked about this on a podcast, 80% I think it's 79.8, but 80% of the Canadians said that America is not a trusted partner anymore. They don't trust it. And it's because of Donald Trump, because of the tariffs, because, the 51st state rhetoric and things like that, but the fact that they crap all over us. And Poilievre will not admit that. And we've talked about this on the podcast, but I think it bears repeating. One of the reasons why is because the hardcore Maple MAGA people that are in the Conservative Party love Donald Trump, and Poilievre doesn't want to alienate them. So he's playing to that. Maybe he does too. I don't know. It's hard to tell from one day to the next just where he is on that. But the fact that he refuses to criticize Trump or Trump's policies tells me exactly where his leanings are right now. Antok says in the poll, 2/3 of Canadians see Americans as a potential threat. You see, and that's not paranoia, is it? It's looking at the reality of what's gone on in the last little while. And again, if Poilievre wants to be on Team Canada, as he said at this meeting, he wants to be part of this a committee that's going to set up, have members of all political parties. That rarely works, especially if they're not on the same page, and we're not. Poilievre doesn't seem to understand where Canadians are. He doesn't seem to understand the challenges, and the challenge is in the White House, and he will not admit to that. I saw the polling on the United States the other night after the State of the Union address. Something like 38 to 40% of Americans give Donald Trump a thumbs up, but almost 60% think he's doing a terrible job. So he's got about a 38% approval rating. You know something? There's a higher Donald Trump likability rate within the Conservative Party of Canada. The surveys that we've seen by Nanos and some of the other polling in this country has about 49 to 51% of hardcore conservatives are Trump fans. So he's more popular with the Conservative Party in Canada than he is with the American people. And Poilievre sees that, and he's understanding that, and he figures those are the base. Those are the people that have to vote for me. I don't want to piss off the Conservative caucus, so he's not going to say anything negative about Donald Trump. And I don't want a leader like that, because he's going to kiss up to him, and he's afraid of him, I guess. He's afraid that he doesn't want to anger Donald Trump. And that's not leadership. That's bending the knee and kissing the ring, and we don't want that now. And the other countries that have done that, I think, are finally coming to the realization that you don't get any further ahead. You can kiss up to Donald Trump all you want, but he's still going to crap all over you. And our prime minister understands that, and he's diversifying. And I'll talk about the China deal in just a couple of seconds, because Poilievre talked about that too. Medic on the Move says PP doesn't want the hassle of understanding where Canadians are. Yeah, isn't that old cliche though? Don't confuse me with the facts. I've got my opinions already, and that seems to be the way he's going here. He does not vacillate from any of this stuff. He's just single-minded about what he wants to do here, because everything he says vis-a-vis Canadian policy is really so he doesn't piss off his own base within the Conservative Party. And it says, Pondering Politics just made a video claiming that Trump people got caught getting ready to steal the election by declaring a national emergency, blaming China. Yeah, there's a lot of talk about that, and it's out there. I mean, Donald Trump has all said, and he said it again the other night, if he loses any election, it's because the other side cheated. No, he said that when he was running against Hillary Clinton. He said that when he was running against Joe Biden, and he's saying it now. The midterms are coming up in November in the States, and Clinton is not running. Joe Biden's not running, yet Trump is continually bringing them up, and Barack Obama, trying to scare the Republican base and say, we don't want those people back in power. But again, he's using that old thing, that old hack, that if I lose, or if the Republicans lose seats in the Congress or in the Senate, it's because the Democrats are cheating. And how many times during the State of the Union the other night did he call them liars, cheaters, terrible people? That's Trump. And Poilievre knows that. He sees that, but he will not call him out on that. And we want to have this relationship with the United States, but you have to understand the reality of where Donald Trump is coming from. I don't have a problem with a lot of the American people. I mean, the 93 million or odd that apparently voted for Trump, I got a problem with them. But I think that number's a lot smaller this year after 1 year of Donald Trump and the impact he's had on some of Americans with their policies. That might have changed. But yeah, too many people got sucked in with this MAGA stuff, and so many people in the United States just love Donald Trump, and because he appeals to the worst of everybody. And yeah, I think I used the phrase the other night that bears repeating. Donald Trump didn't get elected because of the way things are. That the American people were looking for a leader like that. There's a lot of people with their own agenda in the United States, and Donald Trump tries to play to that, to the worst of, to the hatred. Diversifying is one thing, but at the same time, dividing so he can conquer seems to be the strategy that's going on in the Trump White House. That's not the kind of people that you want to make deals with. And our prime minister is aware of that, which is why he's in India, which is why he's going to be in Australia in a couple of days, which is why he's making these agreements with other countries to diversify trade. At no point has Prime Minister Carney ever said, we're not going to deal with the United States anymore. He's never said that. And Poilievre once again reiterated today in his speech, for those of you that saw it, that the goal here is to have no tariffs at all. Well, thank you for that, Mr. Poilievre. Nobody ever thought of that before. No tariffs. What a great idea. Why didn't we think of that? I mean, how naive is this guy? Rodney says he thinks he does well with the questions the reporters ask him in Canada. What's not going to happen when he meets the press in Europe? They're a lot tougher and will eat him alive. He's going on a trip. That was announced today, too, that he's going on a little trip as the opposition leader to a number of different countries. They have not identified who he's going to be meeting with right now. Which is going to be rather interesting. A couple of years ago, remember the hard right, some of the extreme right-wing politicians from Europe, from Germany and France and others, were over here courting some of the conservative caucus, including some of Poilievre's people. So I don't know if those are the people he's going to run into, if he's going to be talking with the leaders of those countries, to be determined, I suppose. But as long as it's all going to happen under the stipulation that this guy does not speak for the government of Canada. He's the opposition leader. He's not part of the government. He lost the election. Username says, I got to go soon, Bill. I have a Habs game to watch, which ain't going to get any mega hockey players on it. That's going to be interesting. There's a lot of tension in the Olympics this year, especially with the men's hockey, because of what went on, and the Trumpism stuff certainly, and some of the negative comments that were made. And I thought the United States team was classless altogether with some of the comments that they made about Canada and others. The Kachuk brothers, who I think are just a couple of airheads, frankly. But they made some rather derogatory comments. And the one guy, the younger Kachuk, I mean, he's the captain of the Ottawa Senators. He plays hockey here. So, you can't crap all over Canadians and Canadian hockey players and then get back up there and expect the fans to accept it. I think you're going to see some negative reaction when some of these guys come back into some of the arenas in Montreal and in Toronto and other places, including Austin Matthews, who didn't make any derogatory comments, but it did not bring people together. Let me put it that way. The whole Olympic hockey thing, I think, caused a huge divide. That's going to take a long time, and it didn't make matters any easier when the megalomaniac in the White House starts calling it out and making some derogatory comments on the AIA video put out about him being a hockey player and punching out Canadian hockey players and scoring goals. I mean, it's childish, but it kind of tells you where this guy's coming from, doesn't it? Big Little Man, hey, good to have you with us today. Says Pierre seems to always avoid talking negatively of the U.S. government. I find that very suspicious. Well, therein lies the problem. Do you really think if Poilievre was at the negotiating table that he'd be out there to find the best deal for Canada, or is he just going to try not to piss off Donald Trump? How many people, Americans, Canadians, Brits, everybody has figured, maybe if we're nice and we just give in to what he says, maybe he'll back off. He doesn't. He doesn't back off. But Poilievre doesn't seem to understand that. He's got this fixation that he thinks everything's going to be fine. He says he foresees having a trade deal that he wants to negotiate and that Canada should negotiate, where there are no tariffs on steel, aluminum, on softwood lumber, no tariffs on the auto industry. You're living in a dream world. The United States is not going to give. They've said this time and time and time again. As a matter of fact, Trump's chief negotiator, his trade lackey, one Mr. Jameson Greer, has been around making media. He's talked to CBC and a couple of other media outlets, and he has said already that, if Canada is okay to accept the fact that there's going to be even more tariffs and higher tariffs, and they want to give us full access to the dairy industry, they want more U.S. dairy products in here, they want to flood the market. If they can do that and just understand that everything is going to be tilted in favor of the United States, then maybe we can make a deal. Well, that's not a deal. That's the kind of guy you're dealing with here. That's the kind of quote unquote negotiations, which are really non-negotiations, that the Trump team is doing. And Poilievre, he's either too dumb to understand that, or he's so naive that he thinks that, oh, well, yeah, but he'll like me and he'll give us a deal. Nobody in the world has a tariff-free deal with the United States. The only one that exists is the one that we have with Kuzma, because still about 90-odd% of the stuff that goes back and forth is covered by that deal. But Trump is ready to rip that up. We got some rough times ahead of us here. And we want people that are going to stand up for Canada, not kiss Donald Trump's you-know-what, trying to get a better deal because maybe he'll like us if we do that. Hi, Ray. Good to have you with us today. Says, I'm convinced 30% of the Conservatives are separatist traitors at this point. It's really, really sad state of the Conservative base. It just brings me pain that these people hate this country so. They want Canada on their terms, I guess. And, well, Danielle Smith is one of those. We'll talk about the referendum maybe later on the live stream today. But they have a very jilted and very tilted vision of what they want Canada to be. And it goes back to what we've talked about. And I know that, I talk to conservatives and they don't like us using the term maple MAGA, but that's what this is. This is extremism. And it's leaked into here. And Poilievre and Giovanni, and you know who the hardcores are within that caucus. And there are others that, frankly, have had enough. And a few of them have crossed the floor and said, you know what, I can't take this anymore. I think our leader stinks. I think the hardcore right-wing base of the Conservative Party is not a very pleasant place to be these days, and they've crossed the floor. And for a variety of reasons. But the most obvious reason that most of them have talked about is Poilievre himself and the leadership, or lack thereof. That tells you an awful lot about the party. And they can get all these ex-people, and they can get Scheer and all these other people that once in cabinet, and the Harperites and everything else, say, oh, no, we are a united party. Yeah, sure. That's why people are jumping across the aisle whenever they can. You either put up and just figure, this is the way we want to be. And there's some very, very radical people within that Conservative caucus who've been there for quite some time. And I can understand why it's frightening for some people to look at and say, those people actually want to run this government. God help us. Username says, hey, Bill, did you cover the supports to Ukraine announced on the 4th anniversary of the full-scale invasion? Yeah, Prime Minister Carney was one of the first right at the front of the line, wasn't he, to make another huge recommitment to Ukraine, and that's good to see. And it's very welcome news. I know that the Ukraine folks have been fighting. I still remember the day that invasion happened. We were still doing the radio show back in those days. And the common sense and purpose that a lot of people had was, these are very brave people. These Ukrainians are going to fight and fight, but it's probably inevitable within about 60 or 90 days, it's all going to be over. Well, now it's the 4th anniversary. And I stand each and every day in awe of the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian people for standing up to Putin and doing what they can, especially in light of the fact that, for all intents and purposes, Donald Trump has withdrawn his support. Not totally, but he's not doing what he should be doing. Part of the mantra of the United States is to defend democracy. And he's doing the opposite there. He's letting Putin pretty much do whatever the hell he wants. Carmen says he probably had to tone it down for the speech because he knows there are more floor crossings possible. That's, Carmen's talking about the speech, I guess, that Poilievre made today. And I've heard those rumors. Again, some of the folks I've talked to that have their ear to the floor in Ottawa are suggesting that there could be more floor crossings in the next couple of weeks. Every time Poilievre seems to open his mouth, we get people just saying, okay, that's it, I'm out of here. Hi, Marilyn. Good to have you with us today. Says, what with today's CBC Power and Politics? Oh, we lost that one. Love Fest on PP, comparing his speech today to Carney's Davos speech. Disgusting. Where the hell are these people coming from? And I understand, Lisa McLeod was on that panel on Power and Politics today, and she was, this whole thing, what a great statesman, what a great speech. No, it wasn't. It was not a great speech, and it was not statesmanlike. It was Poilievre borrowing some of Carney's ideas. We need to diversify trade. Well, duh. He went on and talked about a few other things that he wants to see the government do, too, which I found were interesting, many of which Carney's already started. Well, we need to lower housing prices. We need to start the Keystone Pipeline again. Carney talked to Trump about that 2 or 3 months ago. Poilievre, get with the game here, won't you, buddy? He says we got to get that the other pipeline to the West Coast done immediately. You don't build pipelines immediately. And Poilievre, if you know where the the private backer is, the private companies that's going to help finance this, if you know who they are, please step forward, because right now nobody's stepping up. And there's no way the Canadian government or the Canadian people are going to pay the whole freight for a new pipeline. You're supposed to create partnerships. And ain't nobody stepping forward right now. And again, if Poilievre had any idea about what's going on in the world, he'd understand that oil prices are starting to crash. Danielle Smith's pretty ticked off about that now. They're doing their budget in Alberta this afternoon, and she's blaming immigration for one part of the problem and also falling oil prices. The oil companies and the big guys may not even want another pipeline. They may not even want to finance one. I'm not saying that's a probability, but they're looking at the numbers and they're looking at what's going on in world oil markets and figure it may not be worth their while. So it may be a necessity and it may be something the Canadian government wants to do, but they can't do it alone. There's got to be private sector buy-in for this. And right now, that's not happening. So Poilievre, again, is all these things he's talking about and demanding that our government do. First of all, many of them have already started. The others... It takes time. There's a process and a protocol for this. You can't just snap your fingers and say, let's start building the pipeline tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. And Poilievre, being Poilievre once again, remember the comment he made, I think it was about 2 weeks ago now, that said that if he were prime minister, God help us if that were to happen, that he'd start building the pipeline no matter what the Indigenous groups thought. You don't work like that. You can't work like that. We do have a constitution here in this country, Pierre, and it's about time maybe you read it. I want to read this one, too. Sil says, does Danielle Smith expect that Canadians are going to pay for another pipeline? They're threatening to take away from them if they separate. Nice try, Danielle. Yeah, probably. Danielle Smith is gimme, with not asking a whole lot in return. And she wants to be a partner in Confederation. I don't think she does, really, but that's what she's saying. And we can talk about what's going to happen with that referendum and some of the demands, and that's really what they are, a list of demands that she's talked about, unrealistic demands. But and again, that's another politician, Danielle Smith, just like Poilievre, who's misleading the public, thinking, I've got the answers. All we need to do is this. We'll do this referendum, and we'll get this great support for it, and then we'll dictate terms. It doesn't work that way. I've got another concern, by the way, that nobody's brought up yet, but I want to just lay this out on the table, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this. We've talked about election interference in past elections in this country, certainly in the United States. And every time that there is a referendum, for instance, we always have to be concerned about outside influences trying to influence what's going to happen in the referendum. We know, for instance, that in the Brexit referendum, which had a disastrous impact on the UK, that there was outside influences in that. There were people, Elon Musk might have been part of this, like his company certainly was. The Russians, other companies, other entities were trying to influence that. And don't think that if there is a referendum in October in Alberta, don't think that there won't be forces, including some from south of the border, who may want to try to alter that referendum, alter the results of it, certainly try to influence it too. I don't know what we're going to do to try to safeguard that. I think the Alberta government probably would welcome that sort of thing because they already know what they want to see as the outcome. But that's pretty frightening. Do you take the results at face value, or do you understand that, hey, something is messing around here? There's still, even with the last U.S. election, where Trump was put it back in office, still quite a few people that have done some research into this with the information that they have that think that there was something the way of hanky-panky there too. That Elon Musk, with his technical expertise, had something to do with the voting machines, and that skewed the election results. And this, I think, some merit to at least looking into that. Of course, that's never going to happen in the States, though, isn't it? Rebecca, hey, good to have you with us today. Let's say, don't get me started in the goddamn security clearance that PP religiously refuses to undergo. Reprehensible, and you should exclude him from the leadership position. You know what's interesting about that, Rebecca? Poilievre, once again, with his comments at this speech today, was saying that we should not get the Chinese EVs in here because, first of all, it might piss off Donald Trump. That's good to be the term. But he says they'll spy on us. If we have Chinese EVs, they're going to spy on us. Don't talk to me about security clearances and about outside influence. All right, if you won't get your own security clearance, if you won't, Mr. Poilievre, explain to us why our security, including CSIS and the RCMP investigations, indicated that the Indian government back in those days actually had some influence and tried to influence the conservative leadership race, which, by the way, you won, Mr. Poilievre. How impactful were they? What connection do you have with them and with foreign interference in that particular race? You may be an expert on that, so let's listen to that. But of course, we'll never know because he doesn't want to take that security clearance like everybody else has done. Hi, Linda. We don't know what CSIS is doing about monitoring the separatists in the referendum. That's as it should be. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, our security folks don't say, here's who we're looking into right now, and here's how we're doing it. But you got to know that they're going to keep an eye on what's going on. There are some people who are radical. And you don't know what they may do to try to get the result that they want, and that's pretty scary stuff. And we saw that with some of the crazy people that were involved in that truckers protest that shut down Ottawa a couple of years ago. You remember that one? That was the one, where Poilievre went out there and shook their hands and brought them donuts and coffee and hung around with them and figured these were the people that he thinks are really good Canadians. That tells you an awful lot about Poilievre, doesn't it? Hey, Maple Boy, good to have you with us. Doing referendum costs a lot of money, and it would be a bad idea for Alberta to separate. I think you're right. I think the people of Alberta would go thumbs down on this, but you don't know how this is going to spin and who's going to vote and how this is going to be tabulated. But even if it is a successful result, and I don't think it will be, it's not so simple to try to get out of the Confederation. It's a contract, a legal contract. Darcy says, I truly do not think Alberta has enough people on board to separate. I hope not. There's an element to this, but we mentioned this on one of our podcasts a couple of days ago. There are people within this country, in just about every corner of this country, that said, "Enough of this. I want to be out of here." There are a lot of people in this country, not a majority, but some factions that would like to be part of the United States. God help them. BC had a movement like that. Separation. We want to do this. We want to do that. Certainly in Quebec. We'll talk about that later on after the provincial election, rather, in Quebec, about just what might happen there. Hey, Mike, good to have you with us. My concern about Poilievre's visit to visit European countries is that once he opens his mouth, our reputation on the world stage could take a bit of a hit. That's a concern that I've got, too. You've got the guy, he's a politician. He's not the prime minister. He's not a member of the governing party in this country. And I don't know what he's going to say. I know he's going to shoot his mouth off. I mean, is he going to go to wherever it is, France or Germany or whatever countries he's going to be visiting, and simply start spouting at some of his anti-liberal stuff, anti-Carney stuff? What's that going to do to Canada's reputation? Or are they just going to dismiss him as just a voice in the wilderness, not to be listened to? But when Poilievre gets in front of a microphone, he's got this line of rhetoric that he spews time and time again, and it can be hurtful. You're absolutely right. I talked about this on the podcast, and I think the last live stream we spent a considerable amount of time talking about the great reputation that Prime Minister Carney has globally now because of some of the things he's done and said. I'd hate to see Poilievre go over there and try to destroy that. Linda, reminder, the referendum asking to remain in Canada is already approved and ready to go. The separatists don't even have signatures completed and approved yet. And Daniel Smith has already said, I think it's October 26th is when they want to do the referendum. And they've got 9 questions on this. And including, by the way, to rejig the whole Canadian Constitution. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what she's drinking or smoking or whatever it is to have these delusional ideas about what she thinks she has the power to do as the Premier of Alberta. Hi, Ray. Good to have you with us here. Pierre goes to Europe. We'll have to repeat of Trudeau's visit to India. New York Times. Yeah, well, that was not a shining moment for the Canadian government, was it? When Justin Trudeau went over that trip to India some years ago, and you remember that, wearing the Indian garb and some of the other things that he was saying and doing there. It was not our finest hour by any stretch of the imagination. Things are going to be better, I'm sure, with Prime Minister Carney, who's there now. And I have a lot more confidence in Prime Minister Carney and some of the things that he's going to be doing and saying. And he's already established some relationships with Modi and with some of the other leaders that he's going to be talking to. Including Australia, we can talk about too, because they were one of the first ones. The Prime Minister of Australia is one of the first people to jump up and appreciate and congratulate Carney on his speech in Davos, saying it's about time somebody started talking like that. So there is a reputation and I think an admiration for Mark Carney globally, and I think we'll see more of that during this trip. Argent, hey, this is what gets me going. PP visiting European countries with no security clearance, no matter that he hasn't announced who he is meeting. Yeah, and he says he's using this. There's no government money. The taxpayers apparently are not going to pay the freight on this, which is a nice change because Poilievre I think in the last year and a half before in 2044 and 25, he traveled and spent more money on travel than Justin Trudeau and the other leaders combined. So, I mean, he's crisscrossed the country on taxpayers' dimes. Apparently, this trip that he's taking to Europe, we are told, is going to be from funds from the Conservative Party and not from Canadian taxpayers. So, take that for what it's worth, okay? But, yeah, as to what he says and who he's going to talk to and who he's going to be photographed with, well, that remains to be seen. And we're going to have to deal with those consequences, I guess. Ray, hey, if he wants to represent Canada as the opposition leader on the international front line, but yes, 100%, he needs to pass a security clearance. I think that's the very least he can do, right? Yeah. I saw, and there have been a couple of private members' bills that have been talked about. I don't think they're ever going to make it onto the floor, that would make it mandatory for party leaders to go through the security clearance. And that's not the rule right now. And I think the reason why it's not the rule is because nobody thought somebody was going to stand up and say, no, I don't want to do this. It seems to be the natural thing to do, because the question you always ask, and we've asked, and many of you have asked, is why not, Poilievre? What are you afraid of? What are you hiding? And that's a legitimate question at this stage. I don't know if we're ever going to get the answer to that. Zumba says, hey, good to have you with us here. I'd like to know what Daniel Smith just authorized $40 billion to the province for. The breakdown posted the paperwork today. Yeah, well, there's a lot of creative bookkeeping that's going on in Alberta right now, and they're not doing well. Their healthcare system has gone to hell. They're running a huge deficit, larger than they ever thought. And Daniel Smith has done the usual thing that a lot of conservatives, small c conservative people do. Donald Trump's doing it. Poilievre has done it before. And now Daniel Smith is doing it. Blame the immigrants. We have a housing crisis because of the immigrants. Our healthcare system stinks because the immigrants are overrunning it. Everything is the immigrants. And it's not true. It's not true in Alberta. It's not true in the United States, and it's not true anywhere else. But there is an element of hardcore conservative supporters that believe this and buy into that. They always need, when you're running an authoritarian government, or like to run an authoritarian government like Poilievre does, you need scapegoats, and that's what these guys do. And Daniel Smith is using immigration as a scapegoat. Hey, Glenn, good to have you with us today. PP should go and help Orban win his election. Of course, the president of Hungary. What really bothered me is that at the World Conference the other day that the United States attended, Marco Rubio was there on behalf of the United States and made an interesting speech, which was really just a reiteration of the Donald Trump stuff that he made in Davos. But the first thing he did not meet with Zelensky when he was over in Europe. Rubio did not do that. He got on a plane and went to Budapest and talked to Orban, which tells you where his head's at and where Trump's head's at and where the American government's head's at. They gravitate to authoritarian governments. And this is the mindset that Donald Trump has, and sadly, that seems to be part of the new U.S. foreign policy. So that's kind of frightening. And I'd like to know where Poilievre's stand is on that. We should mention, by the way, that organization, that international organization of small c conservative governments, which really tend to be a whole bunch of authoritarian governments, is being chaired by Stephen Harper, former prime minister of this country. So that kind of gives you a mindset about where the Canadian Conservative Party is when it comes to those sorts of governments. And that's kind of frightening that that mindset is still out there. And there's people in this country that are feeding into that. And, again, we have a right, I think, to ask Poilievre, where are you on these issues? I don't know if I'd believe the answer necessarily. But we just have to accept it for what it is. I don't know what he's going to say or who he's going to meet, but we're certainly going to talk about this. Stop fascism now. Good to have you with us on the live stream. How did people get so wealthy on politicians' salaries? Good question. Good question. He was a backbencher most of the time. I think in the last year or so of the Harper government, he got a cabinet post, so that bumps the salary up a little bit. There is money being paid to him as the opposition leader. He gets more than the average backbench MP now. And, of course, he gets a free house and a free chef and free daycare in Stornoway. I don't know why, in God's name, the Canadian taxpayers have to buy a house and finance a house for the opposition leader. I don't think there's another country, even in the Commonwealth, whether it's Great Britain or any of these other countries, where the opposition leader in a parliamentary system has a house paid for by the government. But we still do that. I'd like to have a debate and discussion about that in Parliament sometime. But as to how he created his wealth, Nobody knows because there is no security clearance. We don't know who he's done what with. He's apparently, according to what we saw, they say he's worth about $7 to $8 million. That's a lot of money for a guy that was just drawing backbencher salary for the last 20 odd years of his life. Buckfu says maybe PP has a dark past and can't get a security clearance, avoiding denial with refusal. Well, isn't that it's an assumption, and we don't have proof of that, do we? But we don't have proof that it isn't. That's the whole purpose of the security clearance, isn't it? To find out who knows what, who's done what, where do you get your money from? That's one of the questions they're asking about people that get rich really quick. They're asking that about Jeffrey Epstein. Down in the States with the investigation, such as it is. I mean, it's being run by the MAGA people, but it's a pretty crappy way to investigate. But Epstein was not a smart guy. He was not an educated guy, but he became a millionaire a number of times over. Where did he get the money from? Well, we're getting an idea as to how he got the money these days, but it's all about connections, and it's all about some under the table dealings that are going on. I don't know what Poilievre's wealth is created from. I don't know exactly what he has done. We told he owns a couple of houses. Well, it takes money to even buy those in Ottawa in those housing markets. But again, it would all be solved. It would all become clear if he just did what every other prime minister has done and every other opposition leader has done, is get the security clearance. But he still refuses. Hey, Kat, he is a double dipper, gets rent from the other MPs. There's housing that he's lived in before. Yeah, I think it's 2 houses that he owns. I could stand to be corrected on that. But he has 2 properties, which he's renting out to other members of Parliament. And of course, he's making money. He's making revenue from that. At the same time, you and I are paying for the place that he lives in with his family. And it's bothersome that sort of thing goes on. I can understand the prime minister having their own residence, which is another concern about Rideau Hall and what's going on with those residences. I mean, the official residence for the prime minister in this country is ready to fall over because governments refuse to pay the upkeep and the work that needs to be done on that, which is something that I guess is going to have to be dealt with at some point. But as for the opposition leader, I really don't see the rationale or the sensibilities of saying, okay, here's your own house. Get your own damn house. You're making a lot of money. Hooked by Donegan says, have you heard that there is a company with the Harper name that received about $1 million from Epstein? I'm hearing all sorts of stuff. And a lot of it's speculation, trying to make any kind of sense out of what we're hearing or not hearing from the release of the Epstein files is very problematic because it's the ultimate government cover-up. And, the way things are going now, Trump signed a deal that said all the files had to be released, all of them. And that it's 3 months ago that they should have all been done. And now we're told that maybe only about 1 or 2% of the files have been released. It's massive. The stuff has been redacted. There was apparently a couple of 4 interviews, I think it was, they were done by the FBI from one young lady who had made accusations about Donald Trump and said she was sexually assaulted a couple of different times and physically assaulted by Trump. And the notes for those meetings, with 4 of them with those FBI agents, have all of a sudden disappeared. They're gone. So, what's going on there? Well, I think we know what's going on, don't we? And that's sad. And these hearings that are going on, even the ones that happened today where Hillary Clinton had to appear before this committee, they're doing this under the guise of, well, we're trying to get to the truth about Epstein. It's a political sideshow. You notice that most of the people, including the Clintons, and then people that's news have been released, are all Democrats. Apparently no Republicans ever went to the island. Apparently Donald Trump, even though he's mentioned in the Epstein files more than anybody else, is not going to testify before this committee. It's a sham, really. And it's sad that that's the way things are going. But, when you have a guy like Trump as your leader, and he stacks the deck and puts his own clowns in front of in charge of the CIA and the FBI and other government agencies, this is what you get. Mayday, our PM needs a new official residence. The old one is no longer safe. You're true, absolutely true there, Mayday. And I guess it happened under Justin Trudeau that he actually moved to the little cottage, I guess, near Rideau Hall instead of the official residence on Sussex Drive. I don't know what they're going to do with it. I know that it's in such disrepair right now that some people are suggesting the whole idea should be just knock the whole thing down and build another one. Nobody wants to say, okay, we're going to do that. When a country is in tough economic times, and let's face it, we are, Nobody wants to say, okay, capital cost. Let's build a residence for the prime minister, when there are so many other priorities that are ahead of that. So I get that, but it's in such a dire circumstance and a shape of disrepair because of neglect, and that's on the past governments for the last 30, 40 years, I guess, who should have done things and didn't do it. You're a homeowner. If you're a homeowner, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you got a leak in the pipes and you don't bother to get it fixed, eventually you get a flood. You get holes in the wall, you get mold, you get all sorts of things going on. You need to do maintenance. And the Canadian governments of the past just didn't do that. And for whatever reason, and because they didn't think it was important, I suppose. And now you've got a red herring, a terrible situation on 24 Sussex, but there's no way that's anywhere near the top of the priority list for this government or any of the governments coming in the next little while. We got a lot of bigger fish to fry right now. Linda, the simplest answer to no longer housing for the leader is opposition, and how's the PM in Stornoway? Well, that's a possibility, although I'm told Stornoway is not in great shape either. I think what we need to do here, Linda, is have a discussion about just what we're going to do and what we think is important for the leaders, and how's it going to be financed. The fact that the governments in the past, when they have done work on Sussex or on Stornoway, they wait for something to break, and then they say, okay, now we got to repair it. Where's the maintenance? Where's the work that needs to be done so that those things don't happen? The White House is an old building. Well, I was going to say it's still in pretty good shape until Trump, of course, got back in there, and now he's knocking the whole damn thing down. I wouldn't be at all surprised if the whole structure gets knocked down. I mean, he's already knocked down one of the wings of the White House, and we're told that there could be some other renovations to the front of it coming up next. You don't want an idiot in charge like that, but there has to be, I think, an adult discussion in the Canadian Parliament about what we're going to do with the residence for the Prime Minister. And again, I wouldn't hold my breath waiting for it to happen anytime soon, but it does seem to be something that we have to have some decision about just how important that is to Canadians, and what should be done about that. But again, the price tag is onerous. Stop Fascism Now says, when should Carney announce the Gripen deal? I'm waiting. I thought it would be announced by now. I don't know if it's being held up for political reasons. I know that there have been some discussions, certainly with the Swedish government and with Gripen. There's also some discussion. I think we talked about this on one of our podcasts about a week ago. We're told that South Korea is not out of the discussion yet. They'd still like to get their hands in that. I don't think so. I think if, in fact, there's going to be any sort of a partnership with South Korea, it could be to do with submarines, although Germany's in play for that too. So what I like about what's going on here is we have options, and we didn't have options before. When we needed fighter jets in the past, well, we got to buy them from the States because that's what we've always done. And this government, Prime Minister Carney's government, has said, no, let's get the best deal for Canada. And there's a lot of back and forth going on. We are still going to buy some of the F-35s. That's happening. We've already ordered a bunch of them, and there may be more. But I kind of fall back to a piece that John Iverson in the National Post wrote about a month or so ago now, that said what he foresees, and because he's talked to a lot of the folks in Ottawa that are, don't want to go on the record, but they have knowledge of this, is that we're probably going to get a mix of a number of American jets, but the Gripens will be in that mix too. So we'll see. Excuse me. Saying, I hope the Kuzma negotiation is over. I hope he's not waiting until then. It's going to have an impact. When they announce, and if they do announce, and I think they will announce, that the Gripen is going to be at least part of the answer for Canadian Air Forces, the Americans are going to be pissed off. Absolutely they are. And, the idiotic ambassador that Trump has set up here has already said that there will be a payback if we do that. Well, we're going to do it one way or another. And it could have an impact on negotiations. But as I've talked about on the podcast, and I think a lot of Canadians are starting to feel the same way right now, I don't think the Kuzma negotiations are going to go well at all. So, whether they announce this or not, if they're going to screw us around, they're going to screw us around. And they may be looking for an excuse to do it, but they're going to do it one way or another. And whether it's because we bought jets from somebody else, or whether it's because we make an agreement with the Chinese government, that's almost immaterial, because the mindset of the Trump government right now is to not do anything for anybody and just give absolutely nothing, and just take. Rocketeer says, hey, good to have you with us here. Honestly, I don't know anyone that wants the F-35s, especially after Trump bragging about the kill switch. Yeah, but then they deny that. And they said that's not really the way. Well, that's what he's talking about, is that the software is still controlled by the Americans. Even if we buy these jets, train Canadian pilots, and fly these things, whether it's NATO, NORAD, whatever the case may be, Donald Trump at a whim could just simply say, okay, unplug them, and they'd be sitting on the ground. Do you really want it, that's sort of an option for a guy like Trump? And this goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of the live stream. 75 to 80% of people that have been positioned in polling with Nanos or some of the other great pollsters in this country, 75 to 80% of them say we don't trust America as a partner anymore. And if you don't have confidence in your partner, you don't have a relationship. We all know that, right? Any deal with Trump is not worth the paper it's written on, which is an interesting idea and it comes certainly into play with Kuzma, doesn't it, Sil? That, even if there is a deal, and I mentioned I don't think that's really possible, how can you trust that he's going to adhere to it? Because what he has done already, with the Trump tariffs that he's talked about over the last, a year and a half now, I guess almost, that was not part of the deal. He's just arbitrarily saying, I don't care what it says, I'm doing this. And he's done that to Canada. He's done that to so many other different countries. You can't trust anything that this guy says. And even if he signs a deal, it's not worth the paper it's written on, because he'll just say, to hell with it. I'm not going to do what this paper says anyway. I've changed my mind. He has no respect. And it's not just to do with international relations. I mean, we know, because it's been well documented, this is the way this guy did his business. Trump, the real estate magnate, who how many bankruptcies has he had? He doesn't pay people that do work for him. He reneges on deals. I mean, this is a guy that can't be trusted. And as a result, Canadians and many other people in different countries just don't have any confidence in any sort of a deal that they could make. Answer says Trump is convicted of 30 plus counts of fraud. Yeah, I think it was 39. That number's in my head. I still remember watching the deal in that New York courtroom, which is why, if you watch the State of the Union address on the other night, on Tuesday night, there's Trump turning around and pointing to J.D. Vance and said, I'm going to put him in charge of finding fraud. I'm yelling at the TV when I see that. It said, it's standing right in front of you, J.D. The guy who just shook your hand there's the biggest fraudster in Washington. But, we're not supposed to realize that. But those realities that almost everybody can understand and see are just swept under the rug in Washington these days. Mitch Ashdown says Swedes are trustworthy. Well, I get that impression. We have done deals with them, economic deals in the past. At 34 counts. Thank you, Randy. He's just correcting me on the number of fraud counts that Trump was convicted of. I knew it was in the 30s somewhere. So it was 34 felonies. But back to your point about Sweden, they are a reliable partner. And, of course, they're also a NATO ally. We've dealt with them before. We've had some discussions with Prime Minister Carney and with the Swedish government on a number of issues. But even before that, my understanding is that there's a very strong relationship economically between the two countries, and it has been for quite some time. They can be trusted. And the other element that I find interesting is if we do go that way with the Gripen, that there is a commitment, although it's not on paper yet, but again, they can be trusted. The Swedes can be trusted. There is a commitment that there's going to be some production of the Gripen here in Canada. I'm told it may be in Quebec, because that's how far the discussions have gone, where they're actually even starting to pick a site. So that's going to create Canadian jobs, which is good. Plus the fact that if they're going to be made here, at least constructed here or assembled here, that we'll have some control over quality control and things like that. Rai says, I hear that Denmark is trying to jailbreak the F-35s because of how often they break down, and they want to make it work better. I saw that, and it's hard. We're not experts in this stuff, and there are either people that are giving opinions on the F-35 is the best ever, and it's got all the hardware, and it's the bee's knees when it comes to aircraft and fighter aircraft, and maybe it is on paper, but if they're laying on the ground because they can't get fixed, or if they can't get parts for it, and we're told that even a lot of the American contingent of the F-35s are oftentimes in the shop, it's great if you got yourself, hey, I got this fabulous Mercedes. What a great car. Why do you drive it? Well, it's been in the shop more often than not. That it's not a very good car, is it? And that's the concern about the F-35s. Is that they can't be relied on. They're not a reliable car or jet rather, that you can say is going to be there when you actually need it. If half your fleet's in the garage and in the shop getting fixed, it's not a very effective force, is it? AK says U.S. Trade Rep Jameson Greer. Greer was with Lighthizer. Remember Robert Lighthizer was the guy that negotiated this Kuzma deal for Trump a few years ago. Greer was his number 2, and now he's the number 1. He says Kuzma will have to have tariffs at some level on Canada automatically, and that's something that Poilievre doesn't seem to understand, or because Greer has been very, very clear about that. As a matter of fact, he suggested in the article I saw on CBC, Greer, that is, that not only were you going to have to accept the fact that there are going to be tariffs, but that there were going to be more tariffs, higher tariffs. He's already said that. That's on the table. And as I've mentioned, when I talk about how little faith I have, the fact that there's going to be any sort of a deal with the United States with Kuzma, is all we've heard from Greer and all we've heard from Trump or anybody else that wants to weigh in on this. Some of those other, pinheads that he's got, Ludnick and some of the other Bassett. It's here's what we want. Here's what we want. Here's what we're going to take. We want access to the dairy industry. We want higher tariffs on steel, aluminum. We don't want any cars made in Canada. We want to bring the cars that are being made there back over here. We want the whole auto industry to be centered in the United States. There's nothing, not a hint of anything about what we'll give in return. The United States does not want to bargain. They want to dictate. They want everything, and they don't want to give anything up. So how can you possibly sign a deal with somebody like that? Sylvia says, anything we Canadians do is going to piss off Trump, so we should just have at it. You're absolutely right, Sylvia. Why bother to try to placate this guy? Because it's not going to do anybody any good. Do what's best for this country. And I think that's the attitude that Prime Minister Carney is taking. And what I like about this is he's not getting in his face. He's not going toe-to-toe with him and just saying, oh, this is the way it's going to be. He's just going about his business, about doing what's best for Canada. I like that. Rebecca says, Bill, do you think there's going to be a spring election? My preference would be 1 or 2 more floor crossings plus 3 by-elections that are coming up. I don't think so. There was an article in the Globe and Mail today. The headline was Liberals going ahead with nominations, and as if, that means an election's imminent. That's the headline. So you think, Carney's going to call a snap election. Read the article. The Conservatives have already started with their nomination process too. So it's what you do with a minority government. The Liberals do it, the Conservatives do it, the NDP, if they ever get their act together, I guess will do it too. It doesn't mean an election is imminent. I'd be very surprised if there was an election anytime soon. Hi, Randy. Good to have you with us on the live cast today. Says, I watched PP's speech on CPAC. Maximum viewers about 620. This is not the sort of guy that demands, I guess, the presence. And there are great speakers and great orators that just seem to capture an audience's imagination because of the content and the delivery. Poilievre has neither of those, so I can understand why the audience numbers were so low. Hey, Linda, I love how Carney says he didn't watch the State of the Union. I believe that he didn't. And why would he? Because you know what you're going to get. I watched it because, we want to talk about it. I've got to watch it. And it was painful, very, very painful to watch. And, after about 15 minutes, you're looking at your watch saying, when's this going to end? It was almost 2 hours long and it made absolutely no sense. And then, so you figure, okay, fine, it's finally over. And I watched some of the recap on Kimmel and on Colbert and a couple of the other shows when it was all over. So I got to bed quite late. Get up the next morning. And these clowns on these other stations, including CBS, which now is a Trump station, saying what a great speech it was, what a great statesman, maybe the best speech we've ever heard. You expect that from Fox. But see, these other guys that are saying this now, and it just figures, it's no wonder that the Americans, our good friends, the Americans, are so screwed up these days. And because they're inundated, no matter where they turn, whether it's on radio or in television and newspapers, with propaganda. Pro-Trump propaganda, and it's frustrating to watch, and even more frustrating to see the sorts of people that are doing this, because Trump has a stranglehold on media, on traditional media, and of course his buddies, Zuckerberg and Musk and others have control over what's going on in social media. So they control the message, and that's job one when you want to run a government like this, an authoritarian government, is control the message, and they're doing that. Brandy's back in here, says Carney's view from Davos on CPAC, 518,000 views. And that, I think, speaks volumes, doesn't it? Especially not just the number of views, but the reaction that Carney got from around the world. World leaders, Macron and prime ministers and presidents from all four corners that said, this is the guy. Finally, somebody's got the backbone to say what needs to be said here. I pretty proud of our prime minister that day, and I'm continuing to be proud of the way that he's handling the circumstances in these situations. A lot of pressure on Carney and other world leaders right now, and as the old saying goes, pressure and crises like that does not build character; it exposes it. And right now, it's pretty obvious that we've got a prime minister that's got a whole lot of character. Big Little Man says, remember to hit the like on Stream Chat. Yes, we will do that. To all of you, thank you so much for being with us. We're going to pack it up in just a couple of minutes here, but I do want to give a few more folks an opportunity here to weigh in on some of these issues, because there are some things that are going to, I think, start to dominate the news cycle over the next little while, especially with Carney in India. I'm expecting, I don't know if there's going to be any signed agreements, but it sounds as if they're pretty close to coming to some sort of an understanding about some of these deals, and some of that stuff is already going back and forth between the two countries. I'm expecting to hear good news from Australia as well, and the Prime Minister has already laid the groundwork for that with some of the earlier discussions. Hooked by Donnie says, every American friend I have wants our Prime Minister. Well, yeah, he's a pretty impressive guy. And it's interesting to see how others are responding. And like I say, it's awfully hard to get a good read on how the American people are doing about this, because the message is being skewed an awful lot because of some of the right-wing influences that are going on with some of that. But I'm pretty happy with the guy we got and running our government right now. And I think most Canadians are. The polling right now indicated last week that Prime Minister Carney, as of this time, has a largest lead of any prime minister in the history of this country, the largest popular lead over the opposition party. And he personally, as opposed to the opposition leader, has a huge lead over Poilievre. Those are pretty impressive numbers. And you don't just buy those, you earn them. And I think Mark Carney, in the short time that he's been the prime minister of this country, has earned them. And that's kind of something that we should be proud of as Canadians. We watch what's going on in the world, and we've always kind of thought, well, I guess we'll just kind of take a back seat and watch what's going on, and we can respond to this, and hopefully we can, get in there every now and then and make a few points. The dynamic has changed with what's happening in the world these days, and yeah, Trump's a major factor, but not the only factor. But what I do notice is that people are looking for leadership and direction, and they're looking to Mark Carney. And that's kind of neat that our Canadian Prime Minister is held in that kind of regard. Carney right now would win 12 seats in Alberta per polling. Yeah, I was surprised. That answer said 420 or 42-17. When I read some of the polling that was done for Nanos and Ipsos and some of the other polls, he's doing pretty well in Alberta. And usually you figure, they hate Liberals in Alberta, and I think a lot of people do hate Liberals in Alberta, but they I think they're very impressed with Mark Carney. Look, good leaders show themselves to be good leaders. Some people are just going to be blinded by it and say, well, that's not the team I want to be on, so I think the guy sucks. Poilievre seems to have that attitude. There are others that are like that. But the reality is that people are looking for somebody who knows what they're doing and can bring people along. That's what leaders do. Is you don't need to coerce people. You don't need to threaten them like the guy in the White House is doing. You need to show them through example that you have a plan that's going to work and that's going to be in the best interest. And people, I think, see that in Mark Carney. And that's one of the reasons why the numbers are so impressive, really, when you look at the popularity that he's got. And he's told us time and time again, and will continue to tell us, I'm sure, that, look, these are challenging times, and there's going to be peaks and valleys. There's going to be some things that aren't going to work out the way that we want. But, when the you-know-what hits the fan, I want somebody who's in charge, who's going to be able to respond to it and not simply react to it and go crazy, throwing their hands up in the air or yelling back and forth. This guy's got a great demeanor. He doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. and always seems to have a plan and always seems to anticipate what's going to happen, what's going to be said, and it has a way to react to that. And that holds us in pretty good stead. Listen, we're going to pack it in. It's been a busy hour, and I know that the time is getting late, and we've got a bunch of things. You go get your dinner. It's going to be late for some people here. I'm so happy that we had a chance to do this. Like I say, that that we're going to continue to do this on a weekly basis. We had a few technical problems the other day that I think we've ironed out with our providers, and we're going to keep on rocking and rolling with this. In the meantime, the daily podcasts are going to keep coming, and what I enjoy most about those is the feedback that I get from you. Once we post these things, I always look for the comments to see where your heads are at, and your ideas. I mean, thoughts, questions, things of this nature is really what this is all about. One quick one here before we finish off from Answer says, the weird thing is that I don't get the impression that Carney is trying to get our approval. Yeah, I know where you're coming from, and he's just doing what needs to be done, and that's kind of gratifying, and as a result, we appreciate that, I think, and Canadians are showing that. Rai says, I'm so thankful that you do these live shows because it's so important to have this information sharing. This is what democracy is all about. I appreciate that, and thank you so much for the kind words. That's what we're trying to do. I remember, the first podcast I did in this format, was that, look, I'm not going to try to change your mind, but I want to make you think. I want you to think about issues. I want you to look from different perspectives. We need to have dialogue in this country. For the longest time, we were not doing that for a variety of reasons. We had people that were stuck in their views and did not want to listen to other points of view. With one of the worst things that could happen as a result of social media, we had so many people that were simply going to sites that reinforced the feeling that they had, right or wrong. And what we're trying to do is break that up and simply say, look, there are other ways to look at this, and there are other people that are involved in this. And that's, I think, what Canadians want to do and need to do. And I'm glad that we have this opportunity to do this with our podcast. And we thank you for your support on that. And we'll do this again next week. We'll give you lots of advance notice on this. So in the meantime, check out the podcast. If you're new to the family, welcome aboard. Good to have you with us. And please continue with the feedback and with your support, okay? Thank you for shedding light on these issues. Thank you for participating in this. And until next time, I'm Bill Kelly. Stay in touch and stay informed.
Bill Kelly Podcast brought to you by Wizen's Law, personal injury lawyers. Listen, you didn't choose to get injured, but you can choose the right lawyer. Wizen's Law, 905-522-1102 or wizenslaw.com.